Everyone talks about minimum viable product. Today my guest, Mohit, he thinks V is the problem, so it's called minimum lovable product.
You need to look at it from the customer's point of view. Put yourself in the customer's shoes and ask, what are the minimum set of features that would delight the customer? The problem with minimum viable is that viability is something that our internal teams define. It's not a view from outside in.
I've heard an example from you, Amazon Fire Phone, and you think the outcome would have been different if it was MLP. Why?
Because clearly it didn't delight the customers. The way I propose that we do stuff, and I've done it successfully, very, very successfully, is number one,
Everyone talks about MVP, minimum viable product. Today my guest, Mohit, he thinks V is the problem, so it's called minimum lovable product. What makes a product lovable?
So you need to look at it from the customer's point of view and ask, what are the minimum set of features that would delight the customer? And that's really the definition of a minimum lovable product. The problem with minimum viable, is that viability is something that our internal teams define. It's not a view from outside in. So you can define viability, whatever. And then you go out and the customers are like, what is this? I don't love it. That's the problem.
I've heard an example from you, Amazon Fire Phone, and you think the outcome would have been different if it was MLP. Why?
Because clearly it didn't delight the customers. You need to delight the customer on top of what they've already seen, right? So if you put that lens on, you would put some differentiating features that would truly delight customers over and above what they already had. Maybe I should ask you, right? We already had Android, we already had the iPhone. What was it about the Fire Phone that people should have bought it for? There really was no differentiator.
So as an engineer, you and I, we generally talk about features, right? We don't talk about customers that much, right? And the teams that we manage also talk about that. So how do we change that? How do we flip it?
So again, you need to start outside in. Start with the customer lens. Have conversations with customers. But then translate them into, I don't even call them features, I call them into requirements. So come up with a list of requirements that you need to have to make the product lovable. And then yes, from those requirements, you build features to satisfy those requirements. So customers, requirements, features.
Can you measure this lovability or lovable part?
Partially. So you can have some conversations with customers and get a feel for what lovable is. But where the rubber truly meets the road is when the customers part with their money. And it's possible that you show them something that they think is lovable, but when they actually try it, it's not as lovable. It has some blemishes. And that's where we have the term, right? Crossing the chasm. So you still have to cross the chasm after you launch the product. But you have a better chance of making a lovable product if you have your focus on making it lovable, as opposed to if you have your focus on making it viable. You may have a much bigger chasm to cross if you come up with a viable product and not a lovable product.
I've heard this in another podcast, okay? This Kevin O'Leary, I'm sure Shark Tank guy, right? He was talking about how Steve Jobs talk about customers, and he has a very different view of things, right? He says, they don't know what they want until I tell them what they want, right? So I don't listen to customers. How do you take that?
So you don't ask customers what they want. You show customers, this is what I'm thinking,
Here's the thought.
and you love it. Right?
it.
Because customers obviously are not, often are not visionaries. Nobody thought about the iPhone until Steve Jobs came and showed them this is possible. But once the iPhone was showed to customers, they loved it. It's suddenly, I didn't even think this was possible, right? And now that it is, boy, I love it. But if Steve Jobs had said to customers, hey, tell me what you want, would they have said that they want that? Probably not.
Completely agree. If there is a situation, there is a form where you cannot technically make that happen, right? We know what exactly customer wants, and we have a thesis of what they would love. But if it's not technically feasible, would your thinking be reversed? Like, should we think of feasibility first and then think about this, or see what customers want and then think about the
Whatever is feasible has to be lovable. I won't come up in the market with a product that is at least not slightly lovable.
I see.
Because if you don't love the product, if a customer doesn't love the product, they will not buy it. And this is how companies are built. The companies need to show traction. I'm not saying that you build the ultimate product as V1, version 1, but you need to build a V1 that's at least somewhat lovable. And then, of course, your V2 might be even more lovable and V3 might be even better. That's all okay. But the very first one needs to have some aspect of lovability in it.
How do you really hire and make sure that, yes, it's coachable and this is a concept that this guys can take?
So first of all, here's the wrong way to hire. So the problem number one is that you opened up the floodgates for any resume to come in. The first thing that you need to do is have some sort of a screening for those resumes so that you only get qualified resumes. So what I do in particular is I have what I call hiring scorecards. There is one hiring scorecard which I call the pre-interview hiring scorecard. And I would like to call what's in it competencies. Think of them as attributes. So let's say I have anywhere from 5 to 10 competencies. One of them could be that this person has graduated from one of the top universities. Another one could be that the person is not a job hopper, and so on and so forth. So you tell the recruiter that just score it yourself and don't even send me resumes that don't meet a minimum bar. So now you're getting qualified resumes. Now you say, okay, seems like this is good. Let's move forward with interviewing the person. And now comes in the second scorecard, which I call the interview scorecard. And now you write competencies in that are particular to the role, right? Whatever the role demands. So it's very role specific. And you distribute these competencies amongst the interviewers, right? Let's say you have 10 of them, not everyone, not in a 45 minute interview, you're not going to be able to test all 10 of them. So you divide and rule, which basically means that if you're interviewing the person, you maybe test for 2 or 3 competencies. If this other person is interviewing, they'll test for another 2 or 3. And so between all of us, we will test all the competencies. And when we come together and compare notes, we'll be able to form a full picture, right? The last phase of interviewing, it's very important, is the reference checking. Right? And the wrong way to do reference check, well, first of all, is to not do any reference checks. The second way is to pick up the phone and ask the reference, hey, is this a good guy? And the other person is likely going to say, yeah, great guy, hire. Completely wrong way. So I again have a third scorecard.
What is that?
I write literally the competencies that I'm interested in. So for instance, one of the competencies is, would you hire this person again? But always followed with on a scale of 1 to 10. So would you hire this person on a scale of 1 to 10? If the score is 6 or lower, it's a fail. Because nobody wants to give a bad score. So if they do want to give a bad score, they'll give a 6, right? And 6 is a fail.
So basically make 6 a comfortable answer to say.
That's right.
In a good way.
That's
but
right.
It means something bad.
That's right.
Okay.
But there is more to it. So let's say they say 8. That's good. But then I'll ask the question, okay, what will make it a 9? So now they're forced to divulge something that has kept it at 8 and not a 9. There was this one situation that, the person could have done better. Okay, what situation was that? Tell me a little bit more. And who are the other people involved in that situation? So now when they tell me about those other people, now I have some blind references to call.
Perfect. Now I have heard of your hypothesis around product, right? And there's a 4.4 pillar hypothesis document that you follow.
Yes.
Please tell us more.
We all know that there's a high probability of failure in startups, right? Or for that matter, any new product. Not just startups. We spoke about the Fire phone. Often, don't we all have the urge to tell whatever failed that, hey, I could have told you that this would fail. There was something that was very obvious about that failure, that somehow the person doing it didn't strike the person, or they weren't willing to listen to it, even if it struck them somehow. And that is really, the inspiration behind a hypothesis document. If a founder or a person rolling out a new product were to write a hypothesis on why whatever they're doing would succeed, at least the mundane, stupid mistakes will be out. So the hypothesis document basically goes like this. It has 4 parts. The first one is the elevator pitch. If you get into an elevator with a prospective customer and you have 5 minutes to make the customer interested in your product, what are the words you're going to say in 5 minutes, right? Those are the words that forms the elevator pitch. And by the way, the Fire phone may even fail just that. So what is the elevator pitch, right? What would
something
interest me?
Similar to what you're using.
Exactly. So it's like, if it's something similar to what I'm using, then why should I change, right?
Exactly.
The second section of the hypothesis document is prescribed description of the MLP, the minimum lovable product. So in your V1, the version 1 of your product, what exactly are the features? What are you coming out with? So describe them crisply. So that gives clarity to your whole team that this is what we are doing, and anything outside of this we are not doing. The third section is all your reasons for why what you're doing would be a hit. And the last section is all the reasons why it might fail. You as a founder or entrepreneur may not want to believe your product will fail. right? You might be drinking your own Kool-Aid. So put yourself in the shoes of a naysayer, or actually talk to some naysayers. What exactly are the naysayers saying? No matter how successful a product becomes, there are always people warning you. So what exactly are they saying? And then your rebuttals against those. Why do you think they're wrong? But if logically sound people, objective people are saying, yeah, this is solid, that's a hypothesis. That's a solid hypothesis. You're looking at, possible reasons why this may not work, and why do I think this will work, right? You're looking at the whole thing from multiple angles, and that's what it takes.
Now, coming back to the lovability part, right?
Yeah.
So you have a set of features you believe, and your customers believe, yes, it is working. And you have, say, 5 happy customers, extremely happy. But you are trying to sell to 500 customers to build a large company. How do you make that happen?
I mentioned the crossing the chasm earlier. Let me bring that back up. It's actually a very important thing. For brevity, let's just say that you're selling to early adopters. And early adopters are by no means an indication that the other people will also buy it. In my mind, the most important set of customers that truly determine whether this will be a wild hit or not is what we call an early majority. The way I think of the early majority is these are people who will normally not buy from a startup. They're used to buying from bigger companies or branded products. Only reason they're buying is because they're dissatisfied with the current state of the art, and they have a pain that they want to satisfy. And you are offering that. You're offering, the lovable part of your product is actually promising to satisfy that pain that they have. But these guys are going to give you a hard time because after all, they're used to some level of polish. And so you go to them and they see the promise. That's why they're even, spending their time with you. But they will not buy, they will not part with their money until all the checkboxes that they're interested in are ticked. So that's where the chasm comes from. You make one customer happy in the early majority, maybe 10 more customers become happy as a result. And you do this enough and magic starts, right? That's what we call a product market fit.
Okay, let's go into product market fit.
Sure.
I had this question always, and I have read multiple definitions. So my definition, I'll probably put my definition there. So it's when my team is excited to meet the customers, right? When I started this company, first 3 years, it's hard. You have to drag people into a meeting, right? Because they know, some of these features will not work, right? Or will not be that exciting. But the moment you see that early signs, these guys will be like running to that meeting. They'll be waiting for that meeting. That's my definition. But I know you have a better, crisper, scientific definition. What is that?
My definition is that a product market fit happens when an average sales guy can sell to an average customer without involving people in the headquarters. Now, people in the headquarters are a limited resource, and that includes the founders, but it also includes execs or whatever, right? Then you have a product market fit.
Yeah, I think that probably is a great definition of a product market fit because they haven't even seen the creator. So they are signing because the product works.
That's right.
Now, when it comes to engineering, right? When engineers come up with a product, often their kick comes from the complexity. When it's complex, they're happy, they solved the problem, right? And some of the features that are like simple may not be that exciting for the engineering team, but that might be the most valuable feature for the product, for the sales team, and for the customer. And it's really the lovability part. Think of the users who are going to consume your product and not the features that are being delivered. So how do you really get that into that engineering culture?
This is the first answer to your question. When it's all about the requirements, it's less about what's sexy versus not sexy, right?
Exactly.
You're just meeting the requirements. You're in to delight the customers. The second thing we do is, so our engineering teams, I like to divide them into swim lanes. The first swim lane is innovation swim lane. So these guys are doing new stuff. The second swim lane is what I call the delight swim lane. So you're working in that to delight customers. So let's say in V1 you release something that did not quite meet the mark. So you're working on improving that. So maybe you gave X level of performance and now you know add to that, or your UI had a little bit less finish and you're adding to that. So anything that will work to further delight the customer is in the second swim lane, and it's as important or probably more important than the innovation swim lane. And the third swim lane is basically dealing with customer issues. All products have issues, but what we don't want to do is the incoming issues is drowning the whole team. And so they're unable to work on the other swim lanes. So what we do is we will, on rotation, assign a few engineers to the issue swim lane. And these guys on rotation will protect the rest of the team. So for that week or for those 2 weeks, these guys are handling all the incoming issues. And the other guys are working on that innovation and the delight stuff. right? And then the rotation happens and they move on. And so engineers contribute to the issue swim lane, but also we'll have something like sustenance engineering who will be there. And so this is how we craft our teams. Each team kind of has these three components. And now you can have a beautiful balance between complexity / sexiness or innovation and delight or simplicity,
Does it work for a startup that's starting tomorrow and also works for any company that's now scaling? Or is it only applicable to the company that scales?
Precisely. If you don't even have a product, if you don't even have customers,
Exactly,
then why do you need
Why do you need the other link?
Exactly.
So these two, okay.
So, but as you're growing, and even in very mature companies, I think it's a very viable model.
So I know you're not a big fan of Scrum.
I'm actually not a fan of Scrum at all.
Okay. So why? Why don't you like Scrum, and what do you suggest as an alternative?
I've had, enough experience with Scrum that I can tell you it doesn't work for the following reasons. Number one, when everything is in the weeds, when it's just a bunch of tasks, you kind of keep missing the forest for the trees, right? So you keep looking at and doing small itsy-bitsy things, and keep missing that big picture, right? Because it's not laid out that way, right? So everyone's thinking they're doing a great job because they're, after all, finishing these small itsy-bitsy tasks, but you're totally missing on the big stuff. Maybe you end up doing too many tasks on something that's mundane. Right? When, you could have done a few tasks on this big thing and a few tasks on that other big thing, but you kept doing too many tasks on this mundane thing and that other thing was missed. That's why I say you miss the forest for the trees. The other thing I've seen is the people who have the most points are actually the biggest underperformers. They somehow game the system to make it look like they're doing a lot. So that totally doesn't work. So for me, this whole point stuff that Scrum pushes is just a baloney. The way I propose that we do stuff, and I've done it successfully, very, very successfully, is number one, I like to divide up all the work that you have to do into a 3-level hierarchy. We want to address the problem that Scrum had with the waterfall model, where you change a little bit and the whole thing shifts. Well, what if we divide up our tasks in a 3-level hierarchy such that we have a lot of detail in the short term? So maybe for the next 2 or 3 weeks, we have tasks. But beyond 3 weeks, we do not have these weeds. We have higher level things called milestones, right? And then even beyond that, we have objectives or areas, right? So for instance, you can divide up a project into the following areas, right? One could be QA, one could be UI work. Now within those areas, you could have milestones, right? And then within those milestones, you could have tasks, but you only populate the tasks when they are only 2 or 3 weeks away.
I see.
Right? Instead of this, you had like a bunch of tasks only. Now it's like a sea of tasks and you don't know where to start. You don't know, are you doing security work? Is that more important right now? Or is QA work more important right now? Right? Or what's the milestone? There's no milestones. That's the first problem with the Scrum model. Whereas in this model, when you have a 3-level hierarchy, you literally have your eye on what's important. And then as that milestone gets closer, you divide it up into more fine-grained.
When you have clarity is when you really make tasks.
That's right. Tasks are only there for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Milestones are only there for the next 2 or 3 months. And the other thing I do, rather than having stupid points or whatever, because they can be gamed, we just deal with dates. Tasks are only there for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So give us tentatively when you can complete it, right? And then same thing with milestones. Give us roughly, when that milestone is going to be done. And we aim for having 1 or 2 milestones getting completed every month. There's no gaming the system by, my task is worth 20 points, right? Okay, none of that. It's just dates. I deliver on the date. So that's the model I follow. And everyone who comes from other parts of the industry, right, they agree. My engineers who've seen all this Scrum nonsense, and they've said, my prior team, the people with the most points were the biggest underperformers.
Now switching to a little bit of outside engineering, and I've heard multiple times from multiple people that Cohesity was able to keep that consistency pretty clean, right? You were consistent right from the start for probably 10 years without pivoting, right?
Yes.
And there must be a secret sauce there.
Yeah, so the secret sauce is our OKR framework. We set quarterly goals through OKRs, objectives and key results. So OKRs are a way to set these quarterly goals. And then plans, the 3-level hierarchy I spoke about, are a way to drive execution towards those goals.
Okay.
So this is how a typical quarter would start. Me as the CEO would build the company's draft OKRs. So I will send them to my executive staff. After looking at them, they will build their own draft OKRs. Now my OKRs are a bird's eye view over everything the company is doing. right? And I like to have no more than 5 objectives and no more than 5 key results within each objective. Now, since my engineering person is going to build engineering specific OKRs, they will probably have some things that I have, but they have other things that are specific to engineering that I may not have in my OKRs. So they continue this process down the chain. The person down the ladder finalizes their OKRs and they send it up. Now, the person next up will be like, oh, that's important. That's interesting. The team below me is doing this great work. Maybe I should put that in my OKRs.
Okay, so
And they'll finalize their OKRs after that.
I see.
So it comes all the way. And finally, when I see my staff's OKRs, I'm like, oh, why didn't I didn't realize we're doing this cool stuff. So that becomes the company's,
final OKR. Oh,
so
that's a
then
good
I
idea.
finalize the OKRs. So these now become the goals, right? And we don't change the OKRs or the quarterly goals. I don't change them no matter what happens, right? So they're frozen after the first week of the quarter. So now we are supposed to execute on these.
So it takes a full round trip.
That's right. Finalize.
It's blessed at all levels. So
Correct.
there is no confusion
That's
from
right.
there, right?
So now everyone knows where to go. So now as the company becomes bigger, everyone kind of knows in which direction we are going and what their role is in that direction. And then of course they will have their plan, that 3-level hierarchy I spoke about, to drive execution towards that. So they will be building their tasks, milestones, or what have you to drive execution to accomplish these OKRs. Right. And what we also do is we have monthly checkpoints. So the beginning of the month, we will grade how we did on our OKRs, what progress we made. And after the third month, which is the beginning of the next quarter, we will actually grade the OKRs. And the ideal grade is somewhere between 70 to 80%, right? Because I want the goals to be a little bit stretch goals. And if we did 70 to 80%, we are good. Right? If we did 90%, it probably means either we did too well, which is possible, or the goals were not lofty enough, right? Conversely, if we only did, let's say, 50%, so either the goals were too lofty or we actually didn't do well, right? And so we need to decide what. But the one thing I insist on is that do not use the OKR grades in performance management, because the moment you do that, people will start gaming the OKRs.
Now, the other topic, prioritization, right? This is hard for especially startups again. We have limited resources.
Right.
Only certain number of people can do certain things. How do you prioritize?
Startups would or companies would hire product managers, and the product managers would decide this thing is higher in priority than that other thing, and the engineers just follow. I like to say that this whole notion that a product manager is the CEO of the product is a very dangerous and flawed notion, for the very simple reason that no one person can make perfect decisions. We leverage product managers to bring in the data, but then we want to make decisions collaboratively. So the product managers should be making decisions collaboratively with, let's say, our other architects. And now that multiple minds are looking at, the data, you're more likely to make a good decision. So the bottom line is that, number one, we don't allow any one single person to make these calls, not product managers, not anyone. So how do we do it? So whatever are the potential projects, there are often too many, right? And we often don't have resources to fund all of them. So what we do is we'll have our core team of architects and management. They will sit together, look at all the potential projects, and they will choose the ones that are the most important.
In terms of customer or in terms of the project?
Both. And they will fund them first. So they will make sure that they're funded. So there are, we spoke about engineering teams, and we spoke about resources for those teams. We will make sure that they are funded first. And these core set of people don't decide on every project that's to be done by engineering. So now that they've decided the most important ones, then they give the rest to their lieutenants and say that, okay, the rest you decide within your teams. And a similar process for these secondary projects kind of happens. So once the core projects are funded, the ones that are most important for the company, they have been provisioned and well taken care of. Then whatever resources are left are made available to these secondary projects, and it kind of goes down and it kind of stops at the second or third layer. That's how we do it. So it's actually not the product managers prioritizing. It's actually a collaborative bunch of people deciding. And that's why we hire smart people. The more smart people that are making these decisions, the more likely you are to make the right decision.
Now, let's talk about the team structure here, right? So there is a team structure that works, and there is obviously one that doesn't, right? And I've heard from you that component-based doesn't work, and project-based also doesn't. Now, what works?
The model I strongly subscribe to is a hybrid model, where you have both. So think about your component team as sort of your home team.
Okay.
So you report there.
Mm-hmm.
And the home team primarily is for doing smaller projects and taking care of your maintenance issues, delight items, and whatnot, right? But if you have any major project, especially if it involves cross-functional effort, then you form a project team around that. So at any given time, you're reporting into one component team or home team, but you may be part of one or more or zero or more project teams.
Project teams.
Right, and so you're not only working on projects, and by the way, the projects will continue until they're stable, whatever, right? So, but you also are working in your home team on many projects or some maintenance issues or whatnot as you're contributing to this project.
Got it.
So that is a model that I've used very, very successfully.
Basically,
right?
there's a deep expertise in component teams, and
Correct.
you push people out so they get some part of other things
Yes.
too.
And the project teams are cross-functional. So it'll have a person from the UI in it. You'll have the UX person in it.
That's
Maybe
good.
it has some QA. So it is a self-contained team. So there's great communication to get the project done. But once the project is done, then we give the onus to do maintenance in the component teams. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So this is all done as part of that meeting we have at the beginning of the quarter between the senior architects and management to decide on the biggest projects, prioritization, and also how to fund them. So that's where we decide all this.
So basically, you have a team, and that has the deep expertise there. Then there's a project. You take people and form a project team, execute this, and go back.
That's right.
Got it. Clear. This time, as a guest, we got a founder and an engineer. So I'm going to ask one question for founders and one question for engineers.
Okay.
Right? What is one advice you would give for engineering leaders, right, who are struggling to get this outside-in view to their teams? Right? How to instill it?
Yeah.
What is your?
My one advice would be put them in front of customers. Right. It's one thing for them to be hearing from some internal people on what needs to be done. It's another thing to actually hear it from customers when you actually see the body language on how badly that customer is hurting or how badly that customer needs this, or conversely, how delighted they are based on what you've delivered. There's a different level of enthusiasm that comes in. Create situations where they can mingle with customers, and you will see their mindset change.
Okay. So now next question. So first, it's hard to find founders. It's extremely hard to find successful founders. You have done $2 billion companies. Now I have all the reasons to ask you this question on behalf of all the founders too. What is one thing you are extremely, extremely proud of? What is one thing you would say, I should not have done that?
I think there are way too many things I can say that I should not have done. But what I'm really proud of, let's start with what I'm proud of. I've been blessed with so many smart people that have worked along with me. And I've seen the world change. Right, at Nutanix, we came up with the concept of hyperconvergence, and I could literally see the delight in customers and how we changed the world and made it a better place. And at Cohesity, we did something similar with data management, security, and even AI. Right, literally, what people thought earlier was not possible, we made it possible, and we grew so many people into just great human beings and experts in this field. So I'm very, very proud, and that's the reason I still do it, by the way. I just thrive in working with people and delighting customers. Now, what I shouldn't have done, I was too slow earlier to take hard decisions. If a hard decision has to be taken, it's much better to take it earlier than later. The second thing is people. Sometimes you keep looking at goodness in people, even when there are enough signs that there isn't or not enough to continue. Sometimes you have to take hard decisions when it comes to people. You don't want to make it a hire and fire culture, but give yourself a deadline. If you give yourself a deadline, okay, I'll see this for, let's say, the next 1 or 2 quarters, and after that, it's it's either here or there. Then you operate with a different mindset.
Perfect. So Mohit, thank you so much for taking the time, joining us. Thanks for breaking it down for us. And some of these topics are extremely complex, and I'm sure there are engineering leaders who would benefit greatly from this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Suresh. This is the first episode of One Idea. Every episode, I sit down with one of the coolest engineers who will share one cool idea that worked for them. No fluff, no marketing. In fact, absolutely nothing other than engineering. Please give us a follow and share it with your friends.